Good evening and welcome to the big story on NDTV Profit. I am Nupur Talwar Suri. Now, 2 weeks ago, the Central Drug Standard Control Organization released a list of 53 drugs which failed the quality test. The regulator also released a list of pharmaceutical manufacturing units spread across 8 states where these raids were conducted. Some of the medicines that were found to be of substandard quality included paracetamol, vitamin supplements, high blood pressure medication, common antibiotics. In fact, the list is endless. This is not a new problem, but this is for the first time that the authorities have cracked down on so many units. The NDTV network decided to pay a visit to some of these units to find out more.
Pantomed, paracetamol, antibiotics like amoxicillin, vitamin C and vitamin D3 tablets, adrenaline injections. These are some of the medicines which have failed the drug test. NDTV reporters travelled to some of these manufacturing units in different states to try and find out more. First stop, Haridwar. Our reporter visited Pure and Cure Healthcare's manufacturing unit, which allegedly manufactured spurious Shell Cal 500 tablets. Pure and Cure Healthcare is still making these medicines to this day. There's a common sentiment that these companies should not be spared and proper action should be taken against them.
ऐसी कंपनियों को किसी प्रकार बख्शा ना जाए और इन पे कठोर से कठोर कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि ये जिंदगी से खिलवाड़ करना व्यक्ति का। और मैं तो कहता हूँ उन डॉक्टरों को, क्योंकि वो आज की तारीख में एमआर आता है और दवाई, उसमें आप देखें कितनी बड़ी बड़ी कंपनियां हैं, एल्केन कंपनी है और भी अन्य कंपनियां इसके अंदर है जिसकी दवाइयों सैंपल फेल हुए। और ये बड़ा दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है देश के अंदर कि ऐसी कंपनियों को लाइसेंस दे रखा है।
Next stop was Mascot Health Series, which is also in Haridwar, whose quality head and director Jitendra denied any wrongdoing.
हमारी दवाई में उन्होंने लिखा है कि डिस्क्रिप्शन में फेल है. It may be happened due to improper storage condition at the destination. अगर कहीं दवाई का स्टोरेज कंडीशन पर्टिकुलर स्टेप का नहीं मिलेगा तो ये उसके कारण हो सकता हो, लेकिन हमारे कंट्रोल सैंपल हमने चेक किया तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है.
Pharmaceutical giants often outsource the manufacturing of their medicines to smaller vendors and contractors across the country. This is usually where contaminants creep in. All this simply for a higher profit margin.
बहुत सी दवाइयाँ ऐसी जैसे आपका ब्लड प्रेशर, शुगर, इनकी दवाइयाँ बहुत रेगुलरली ली जाती है. इनके पेशेंट जो है वो बिना दवाई के बिल्कुल भी नहीं चल सकते. तो ऐसे में दवाइयों के मापदंड के ऊपर खरा ना उतरना ये बहुत ही दुर्भाग्य का विषय है.
The pharmaceutical industry, however, denies the allegations.
सर, जो लिस्ट या अलर्ट जो CDSC ने जारी किया है उसमें नकली दवाई के नाम पर सिर्फ 5 कंपनियां हैं, 5 प्रोडक्ट है जो गवर्नमेंट ने नकली डिक्लेयर किए हैं. बाकी दवाई NSQ हैं, नॉट ऑफ स्टैंडर्ड क्वालिटी. उसमें हरिद्वार की 5 कंपनियां हैं और उन सभी दवाओं में ज़्यादातर बहुत माइनर डिफेक्ट हैं.
जहाँ तक हरिद्वार की बात करें तो हरिद्वार में 200 कंपनियां ऐसी हैं जो दवा निर्माता के रूप में काम करती हैं, जिसमें से 5 कंपनियों को CDSO ने चिन्हित किया गया है. उन 5 की 5 कंपनियों में दवा निर्माण कार्य अभी भी लगातार जारी है. अब देखना होगा CDSO की कार्रवाई सिर्फ कागजों में सिमट कर रह जाती है या कुछ गुणवत्ता के मानकों पर असर दिखाती है. हरिद्वार से राहुल कुमार, NDTV.
All right, so the 3 big questions that we are asking today are: question number 1, how do we stop spurious drugs from entering the market? Question number 2, who should be held responsible for the patient's safety? And question number 3, what measures can be taken to ensure quality control of these drugs? Well, to answer some of these questions, we are now joined by Dinesh Thakur. He's a public health activist, founder of the Thakur Foundation. Good evening, Mr. Thakur.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Thakur. Mr. Thakur, now the latest CDSCO raids have raised grave concerns about several common drug formulations that unsuspecting Indians consume. Now, what do you make of the findings and how do we stop these spurious drugs from entering the market in the first place?
Well, this is not the first time that you've had drugs not of standard quality. Remember, I've heard one of your reporters talking about spurious drugs. The definition of a not of standard quality drug in India is different than the definition of a spurious drug. the list that the CDSC has put out this time with 53 medicines that failed testing, a large majority of those are not standard quality drugs. Spurious has a very different connotation, so let's just be straight about the definitions first. The question here is that this is not the first time that we found out that a large number of these drugs are failing testing by state and central drug laboratories. What is different this time is under pressure from people like me and others who have been asking for the names of these manufacturers to be released. The CDSC has actually put out the names. In the past, all it used to do was tell us through a similar notification which medicines have failed without telling us who the manufacturers of those medicines were. The reason you're seeing the outrage that you see right now is because this list actually has names of very large companies. You're reporting here, it included visits to smaller and medium-sized manufacturers who's probably not very visible among the consumption of medicines in India. If you look at that list, that contains a number of very large companies which are household names. The question you're asking is that how do these medicines enter into the drug supply? The reason these medicines enter into drug supply is because the state drug regulators who are responsible for licensing manufacturing facilities like the one that you showed me a few minutes ago, they are the ones who are giving these people licenses. The question is, on what basis are these licenses given? You've interviewed managers and officers of these facilities, the manufacturing facilities. The question that one needs to ask is that what is the criteria based on which the state drug regulators of Himachal and Uttarakhand are giving these companies license to manufacture these drugs? Because in our research and what we've documented extensively in our book, The Truth Will, a lot of these facilities don't even have basic equipment, standards, training to be able to sort of, manage the manufacturing of these drugs. So you'll have to understand, you have to ask the state drug controllers, what is the basis on which you're providing manufacturing licenses to these companies? The second question you asked, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that how do we stop these companies from making these kind of drugs? Last year, the government passed Jan Vishwas Bill, which is now the Jan Vishwas Act. In July of this year, the government actually published in the Gazette the proposed rules operationalizing the Jan Vishwas Act. And in that rule, what the government is doing, which I had written about extensively last year, is basically compounding the offense of making substandard drugs. What that means is that they are giving immunity from prosecution.
Right. I wanted to come to that part specifically.
Yes.
Do you think, and you've just talked about it, part of the problem that is there in India is that we never affix blame. We conduct these regulatory, we look at the regulation, the regulator goes there, does an exercise of finding that there are substandard drugs, the list gets published, there's a hue and cry about it. But after that, there is a relatively very little follow-up, and the people who are behind these substandard drugs never actually see any sort of conclusive punishment. It rarely goes into the judiciary at all.
Well, so the data actually is different. The data is that the drug inspectors do diligently file prosecutions with the district courts and civil magistrates. Unfortunately, how the judicial system works in India. Even in cases where, after great diligence, the drug inspector establishes that the manufacturer and the officers of the manufacturers are culpable, the judge basically hands a sentence of 20,000 rupees of fine, despite the fact that in the past, prior to Jan Vishwas, we really had the ability of the judicial magistrates to impose penal punishments, but they never did that. That's the first issue. If you do not provide deterrence, if you do not penalize people who put lives at risk by making substandard drugs, and this has been going on not for the last 5 or 10 years, it's been going on for 75 years right now. The question here is that how do you prevent people from making this kind of mistakes again? Because the judiciary essentially sort of gives these people a pass. The second question is that lay people like you and me and my family in India, We don't raise our voice when these things happen. This is the first time that you're seeing the kind of outrage that you see. Go back just a couple of years ago, during COVID. You've seen the kind of medicine that was sold under scaremongering. Medicines like favipiravir, medicine like ivermectin, which had nothing to do with what a cure for COVID was. And these companies made crores and crores of rupees. There is no accounting for that. And so, yes, I mean, the drug inspectors go out and do inspections, but they do not tell us what they actually find. I've never seen a inspection report written by a drug inspector other than what we had gotten in an RTI Act from Karnataka of what the central drug inspector does when it actually goes and inspects these facilities. All we get to know is that this facility was found to be wanting in terms of compliance. Why is the inspection record a state secret? In the United States, when inspectors from the US FDA come and inspect facilities in India in 30 days, they publish the inspection report. People like me get to know what was wrong with that particular facility. Why doesn't a drug regulator actually publish these reports? Why is that a state secret? You're asking me who's accountable. The accountability rests with the Ministry of Health and the drug regulator, which essentially is captured by the pharmaceutical industry in India.
Right now, India, of course, is also known as the pharmacy of the world. Now, when reports like this one come out, it obviously does a huge amount of reputational damage to our attempts to continue manufacturing drugs. Of course, a few years ago, there were reports that came out that suggested that spurious drugs were sold by India to other African countries. There was a hue and cry about it. But that kind of reputational damage is something that India cannot afford at this juncture when we are hoping to take a leap forward.
What would you like me to say? I mean, you've made a statement. I agree with you. What would you like me to say?
I would like you to tell us, how do we go forward with dealing with this problem if we want to keep still be the pharmacy of the world and produce drugs that are of international quality?
We do produce drugs of international quality. The medicine that is exported to the United States and Europe complies with the standards that are applicable in these countries. It's not that we do not know how to make drugs of good quality. We absolutely do that. I live in the United States, and 80% of our drug supply is generic. And the medicine that I take is manufactured in India. It is not that we do not know how to make good quality drugs. We absolutely do. The question here is that why do we have dual track manufacturing where we follow one standard when we make medicine for export to the United States and Europe, and a completely different standard when we make drugs sold in India or export to Africa? The reason that happens is because our regulations are incompetent. Our regulators are incompetent, our regulations are ineffective. And the judicial system does not hold wrongdoers to account. That's as simple as that.
All right. So what is the way forward? Do we need more policy to come in? Do you think that the regulator needs to be made more accountable?
The first thing we need to do is take bills like Jan Vishwas Bill Act back. Because if you're providing immunity from prosecution to these people who are making medicine that could potentially kill you, what message are you sending to the industry? What are you telling them? You're telling them that it's okay for you to make bad quality drugs that kill people and get away by paying a paltry fine of 20,000 rupees. Is that the message that you want to send? Why don't we start there? Why don't we take that bill back, right? And introduce something that is more accountable, where if you find medicines of this nature that are actually failing the state and central drug testing laboratories, you file prosecutions against these people and make them accountable in the court. Let them come out and tell us specifically why are they taking shortcuts when these companies, the bigger ones, I'm not talking about the ones that you showed here in this program, but the bigger ones, why is it that they follow different standards when they make medicine for export to the United States and don't follow the same standard when they make medicine for consumption in India with our population? Why don't you ask them? Why don't the ministry or the regulator, the courts, ask them to come on record and explain this to us, the lay people of the country?
Right, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dinesh Thakur, for joining us on the broadcast. So you are, of course, talking about the fact that there is a problem with the regulator and with us following up with action. Thank you for joining us on The Big Story.
You're welcome.
All right. Prosenjit Datta, a senior journalist who has written about how substandard drugs carry a huge economic cost, is also joining us on The Big Story. Hi, Prosenjit. Thank you very much for taking out the time to speak to us. To begin with, now, the CDSCO came out with a list of about 50 drugs. But apart from that, there have been several instances in the past where we've exported medicines abroad and questions have been raised about their quality. Now, how do you see this constant battle that we have to face with substandard and low-quality drugs?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Nupur. Essentially, the problem is very simple. See, when we export drugs to the US or any other developed country, their regulators make sure that the manufacturing facilities which are manufacturing which are making the generics that go there are of high quality and follow good manufacturing practices. Whereas when we export to smaller countries, quite often nobody is checking the quality of the drugs that are going. If we are exporting to countries in Africa, neither the Indian regulator is checking that whether all those drugs are of the high quality that need to be exported, and those countries obviously have lax regulators too. So what happens is that particularly in the last 2 years, there have been a number of cases where our cough syrups have proved to be, have killed many children. Our drugs have been substandard and have been rejected if they have been checked. So this is a grave danger to the pharmaceutical industry's reputation as a whole, especially since we are probably the largest manufacturer of generics in the world today.
Right, absolutely. So obviously there is two parts of this. There is the regulation part of it, and the other side of it is following it up with action. Now, often these raids are conducted and we don't see enough action in the aftermath to A, reassure the public that this is an issue that is constantly being dealt with, and B, to send out that message.
The policymakers and the regulators need to take this far more seriously than they are doing now. For example, even if somebody is caught supplying substandard drugs, generally he or she gets away with a slap on the wrist, nothing more. The maximum fine they may pay after 6 months or 8 years, several years of litigation would be barely 20,000 rupees or 30,000 rupees. They are not banned for life. They don't go to prison. Nothing happens to them. At the same time, we do not have any laws which force them to recall even the batches which are found to be defective or substandard. So if the CDSCO will fairly regularly monitor or pick up samples and test them. And this is not the first time. This is the first time that it has come so much in the papers, but practically every other month you will read about drugs, samples which have been found to be substandard. Now, when they say substandard, it doesn't say that whether they contain even 0% of the drug that is required. And then there is no further action. I mean, that entire batch doesn't get condemned and recalled. There no manufacturer, or for that matter, marketer of that drug will be told that, okay, if this happens the second time, you will lose your license. It is just, life goes on as normal. Nothing happens.
Right now, this also is associated with a huge economic cost, which low quality and substandards drugs actually attach to themselves. One, of course, is reputational damage that a country like India, which is known as the pharmacy of the world, can not essentially deal with at this stage of our economic growth. What do you think needs to be done to ensure that we can limit this damage now that reports like this keep coming out, and also explain to us what are this attached damage that doesn't stare us in the face, but it's there?
See, the greatest damage that happens internally in our domestic. Let us say even if the 10% of the drugs are not good, they cannot cure your disease. Instead of having a fairly mild fever which goes away in 2 or 3 days of taking paracetamol, you could be laid on your bed for 14 days, 15 days because the paracetamol itself is false or substandard, right? It is much worse if you have got a malarial or a viral attack or any sort of disease which requires a strong antibiotic. You take the antibiotic, you think that it is not working, doctor gets puzzled, he tries something else. You take that too. If you're lucky, that will be working on you, or it might not. So from your point of view, you're spending a lot of unproductive time. You are also, you cannot work. You are spending lots on doctors and on drugs, but they are not curing you. From a company's perspective and from the country's perspective, all these show up in little ways in the productivity lag that we face with other countries. India is known as having low productive workers. Then there is the other danger. The other danger is that suppose you have taken antibiotics for a long time, which are substandard, and they are not working. At some point, you are facing a really serious, antibiotic resistance, which will then make it impossible for even the right doses or stronger doses of antibiotics to work on any disease. So people will develop immunity, and these are all huge problems which are staring us in the face. Then there is, of course, the debt problem. There are so many poor people who need to borrow money, or even middle class, they are hospitalized, their treatment is prolonged, they spend money, they are in debt, they go bankrupt. So these are all things which are huge problems which the government does not seem to pay much attention to. The regulator needs to understand that you could grow faster, your industries could be more efficient, your people could be more productive if only if people got the right drugs at the right time instead of substandard drugs, which don't cure them when they have a fever or a disease of some sort.
Right. So what you're suggesting is that this is a much larger problem that needs to be dealt with head on. Thank you very much, Prosenjit, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Well, with that, it is a wrap on the big story. Thank you very much for tuning in, but stay with us on NDTV Profit for more.
The Dabbawalas, a symbol of Mumbai's enduring spirit, capture the imagination of the city like nothing else. Long-standing, hard-working and with tireless dedication. This 130-year-old institution, which has been delivering lunch boxes on bicycles to the working class of the city, will now experience a sense of ease, thanks to the introduction of sustainable mobility through e-bikes into their daily routine.
133 साल से ब्रिटिश काल से हम लोग मुंबई में डब्बा पहुंचाने का काम कर रहे हैं। मुंबई को सेवा देते देते आज मुंबई की जो सड़कें हैं, मुंबई का जो जीवन है, भौतिक जीवन है, उसमें काफ़ी सारे बदलाव आए हैं। आज अगर हम रोड पे चलते हैं तो 20 साल पुरानी मुंबई और आज की मुंबई, इसमें बहुत बदल है कि लोगों की भीड़ और उतनी ही वाहनों की भीड़ मुंबई में लगी रहती है। इसकी वजह से मुंबई में जो वक्त पे डब्बा पहुंचाने का हमारा जो कौशल है, या तो फिर इसमें थोड़ी बाधाएं ज़रूर आ रही है। थोड़ी कसरत का सामना करना पड़ता है, थोड़े समस्याओं का सामना करना पड़ता है, ट्रैफिक बहुत ज़्यादा रहती है, मगर जो हमारा लौकिक है कि वक्त पे डब्बा पहुंचाने का, ये लौकिक संभाल के रखने के लिए हम जी तोड़ मेहनत कर रहे हैं।
Vatavaran, an NGO which has been a strong advocate for clean air in the city, has provided 25 state-of-the-art e-bikes to the Dabbawalas along with IIFL Foundation, CSR wing of IIFL, one of the players in the financial service space. They believe that the Dabbawalas have the potential to be much more than just tiffin servers and play an active role in promoting sustainable transportation.
मुंबई में जो पिछले 134 साल या 134 इयर्स जो कम्युनिटी सर्व कर रहे हैं साइकिल से, वॉकिंग से या लोकल ट्रेन से, तो दैट इज़ द मोस्ट ब्यूटीफुल मॉडल जो हम कह सकते हैं कि दे आर द रियल चैम्पियन ऑफ द क्लाइमेट एक्शन लेने के लिए, क्लाइमेट एक्शन के लिए वो एक असली चैंपियंस है।
The Dabbawalas feel the e-bikes will greatly assist them in their food delivery.
सोसाइटी में हम लोग पोल्यूशन फैलाने वाली कोई भी वाहनों का इस्तेमाल नहीं करते हमारी टोटल डिलीवरी सर्विसेज में, सिस्टम में। तो इसके चलते ये लोगों ने जो हमें ई बाइक्स दिया है, उसकी वजह से हमारे कार्य में सुलभता भी आ सकती है और थोड़ी उस फास्ट ट्रैक पे भी हम जा सकते हैं।
The number of Dabbawalas dropped drastically after the COVID-19 pandemic. With this initiative, the hope is that they will be restored to their former glory.
We have given these EV bikes, which are environment friendly, and this will create less carbon footprint.
The expectation is that many other last mile delivery systems will follow this initiative, paving the way for a better, more sustainable future in the city.
हम ये जो लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी की कंपनियां जो हैं, कई सारे कंपनियां आज हमारे घर घर में विद इन द मिनट्स हमारे चीज़ें पहुंचाती हैं। तो ये सबसे ज़्यादा हवा प्रदूषण का स्रोत या एक जिम्मेदार अभी भी है और आगे जाकर भी होने वाला है। तो ये सभी को एक रोड मैप करके, एक मॉडल करके हम डब्बावाला चाहते हैं कि वो डब्बावाला का मॉडल जो है वो अडॉप्ट करें।
For over a century, the Dabbawalas from Mumbai city have been a symbol of eco-friendly practices. Now, with the introduction of e-bikes for them, it not only makes their job easier, but also helps them continue the cause of a clean-aired Mumbai in the future. More importantly, it spreads an important message that a change does not necessarily come at the cost of environment. With camera person Hemant Mohite, this is Anush Raite reporting from Mumbai for NDTV.
Well, we've got some news coming in. Well, the much-awaited overhaul of the F&O trading criteria has come in. Now, we understand that SEBI has put in place curbs for trading to essentially tame the trading frenzy. And joining me on the broadcast right now is Sajit Mangat. He has more details of what has come in. Hi, Sajit. Take us through what we are learning.
Yeah, that's right. Finally the circular which we were talking about since morning has been notified by the market regulator, and it's pretty much in line with the consultation paper which was floated by the regulator in July. And based on that, there has been quite a few of the recommendations have gone through, and they have basically decided to implement the entire circular going forward. Exchanges will have to implement it in a phased manner because there are already existing contracts in place. So in a phased manner, they will bring in all the changes, which includes a couple of things like margin extreme volatility margins, which will be there, intraday margins, which have been there. So increase the size of the contract, because currently the contracts are between 5 to 10. It will go up to 20 to 30 lakhs there, which basically means that anyone who wants to buy one contract going forward will have to pay up at least 3 to 4 times what he or she is paying now for index options contract. The bigger thing which is there is that now the regulator has limited the weekly option to one benchmark index in each exchange, which basically means that Nifty 50 will be one of them from NSE, and the Sensex option futures and options will be one which will be there from the BSE. There is no limitation on the index product as such for monthly options, but weekly it has now been reduced to one. Remember, we were trading almost one expiry a day. On every day of the week, there used to be one index which used to expire. That used to create a volatility and speculation. The purpose of the regulator is to bring down that volatility and speculation and reduce the kind of exposure that retail investors have in this market. There has been already a couple of surveys in place which has spoken about the kind of losses retail investors have taken as a result of the exposure to F&O or futures and options market there. So so it's pretty much in line with the thing. There was some kind of apprehension yesterday when the SEBI board meet happened and the release didn't have anything on the F&O curves. But as we said in the morning, that the curves will come in because it's part of the circular, and the circulars are not taken to the board for approval. It's an administrative process, and so SEBI will soon notify the circular.
All right. Now, as you're pointing out, of course, this is quite in line with what we were expecting. We are given to understand that it comes in place from November. Now, how do you see the impact of this now going forward?
That's true. Just to give a perspective to all our viewers, there already exist contracts in place. What market regulator is saying that they don't want to do it in one go because people have existing positions which they have already taken in. So it comes into play more from November. So there is already 3 or 4 contracts, weekly contracts, which have come in. So the weekly contracts from the month of November is when it will get implemented in this fashion. There will be a notification that will come in from the stock exchange soon, which will elaborate more on the strike prices, more on the kind of size of the contract. All this will be more clear because it's up to the stock exchanges to implement that. As you said, this entire thing would be introduced from November 20th onwards. And so there is a month and a half before that can happen.
All right. So we'll have to wait and watch for whether, SEBI's aim of essentially discouraging retail investors actually, these new measures hit the nail on the head or not. I'm going to try and go across right now. We'll go back we'll go across to Rajesh Palavia in just a bit. But as we were pointing out earlier, Sajit, obviously the aim for SEBI right now is to make sure that they are able to discourage retail investors who were losing a lot of money in F&O trading. Do you think that this perhaps is going to deal with that problem?
What we have seen from various reports and surveys, and the National Stock Exchange and the SEBI in various reports have mentioned that the average ticket size for people trading in options, especially the weekly options, is around 6,000 rupees or so. That is something which is a cause of concern for the regulator because that brings in more speculation, brings in more investors who are not educated enough to deal with complex product like futures and options, and you end up nearly 93% of them end up losing money because of the investments. And that's not a healthy sign for the market as well, because when you lose money in the market, you lose confidence in the market, and then you don't invest in the market. The regulator wants it very clearly that it should be a very educated call to come and invest in the market. They encourage investment into the cash markets where you can buy stocks. They also are not opposed to investing in F&O market, provided you have the ability to understand the market and trade accordingly. One thing is very clear from this service is that the more time you spend in the market is when you get to reduce your losses. That's the case both in cash market as well as in F&O market. But it's time you spend in the market is when you get to learn how to trade in the market there. The other concern which has been brewing from not only the regulators but also from the finance ministry is the shift of household savings from bank deposits to the futures and options market, and that is something concerning. That's something concerning for the market, for the regulator as well. So far, if you see a year back, the market regulator was not so concerned about it, because investing is a decision which is left to the individuals. The market regulator was only concerned with respect to the market risk and whether it creates a systemic risk or not. The macroeconomic changes and the systemic changes which is coming in is going to disturb
Sajid,
yes.
Let's just get in a word from Rajesh Palavia, who's joining us on this. Rajesh, finally, we are seeing the curbs that have been put in place by SEBI. Obviously, the aim was to curb retail investors from going into F&O. How much of an impact do you think this will have?
So definitely there was a concern for the retail investor to protect the interest of retail investor. This major 3-4 curbs they have already in this circular. So the first one is the major activity which was happening on the daily option expiry, which is happening on the exchanges. So per exchange, one weekly expiry, that will also down these kind of speculation activity especially on the day-to-day basis for the indices which retailers are participating in this market. And again, the lot size has also increased to the 15 lakh. This will also restrict them to participate, those who are having low capital base. So basically, this measures which they have announced in this circular is clearly to protect the interest of retail participants, those who are novice in market and those who are not having that much of experience in the derivative market, and they are just playing the market as a speculation activity on expiry days. So this will curb those kind of activity. Yes, definitely it will give impact to the market on an immediate basis. Maybe we can see some volumes to be shrink for the options trading especially. So, but yes, it will protect the retail investors from losing the money which they are losing on a daily basis, or majorly the concern is on the to protect their interest. So I think this will help these two major impact, two major initiation. One is one exchange, one weekly expiry, and second one is to increase the lot value also. And now they will charge the upfront premium also, even on the selling of options on expiry, that they will increase the margin by 2%. So this will also restrict some of the retail participants, those who are just playing the writing of option just to pocket the premium. So I think majorly the margin requirement as well as the deployment of capital has been increased by putting all these measures. That will really help the retail investor to protect by losing the money. So I think these measures will give impact on the market on an immediate basis to dry down some of the volumes on an immediate basis, and the activity and participation will go down.
Rajesh, the regulator has given a glide path to implement all these measures. It goes all the way up to April 1st, 2025. Do you think that that's a fair way to bring in all the curves? Because your intraday monitoring of position limits, all those come into effect from April 1. The removal of calendar spread treatment and upfront collection of option premium comes into effect from in February. It's only the short-term measures like the contract size, rationalization of weekly index derivatives, and increase in tail risk coverage, which is extreme loss margins that comes into effect from November 20th.
So I think this weekly one exchange, one weekly expiry will take effect from the November itself, and I think yes, the calendar spread and other things will take effect from the Feb 2025. So I think yes, they have given a sufficient window, because the major participation in these kind of spreads and other things is done by the major those who are having prop books or algo trades, those who are running their strategies by doing these kind of calendar spread to get the benefit of margin. But retailers generally play in the market on the plain vanilla side. They are just option buyer or seller. They are doing one leg strategy generally, but this calendar spreads or these kind of strategies is majorly run by the those who are seasoned trader or prop desk or algo trades or strategies. Those who are deploying on the market, they are getting the benefit of this calendar spreads. But now by removing this, I think it's a level playing field for everyone, because they will require higher margin to deploy if they want to do these kind of strategies. So I think removal of this calendar spread benefit will have an impact on the margins. So I think that will discourage the benefit of this calendar spread. So I think again it will be a level playing field between the retailers as well as those who are having a high capital base.
So Rajesh, you think that these measures will go a long way? Let me also bring in Mr. Sunil Subramaniam on this. Hi, Sunil, how do you see these measures? Now, the basic aim of SEBI was to curtail retail investors from losing money. Do you think that these measures will essentially provide for that?
Yes, I think so. I think they will work towards that. And you will see that retail will probably, and you can connect this to yesterday's regulation around the new investment strategy set of schemes that MS can launch, where naked shorts are going to be allowed by fund managers. So this will probably drive them to a more regulated piece of the market rather than trying to do on their own. So I think it's on the whole, it's something that will protect retail investors.
All right. Right. Sunil, stay with us. I think we've also got Agam Vakil joining in with a question for you. Agam, I think you have a question for Mr. Subramaniam. Please go ahead.
Right, Mr. Subramaniam, my question actually is to do with the kind of impact that we may see on listed players. One of them, of course, is the BSE, which in fact did see a considerable rise in not only its revenue and bottom line, but we've also seen a lot in terms of price action. And Mr. Subramaniam, again, I understand if you can't be stock specific, but in general, in terms of the kind of impact that it can have with respect to revenues for exchanges, it could be substantial, because ever since we've seen that introduction of weekly options expiries, we've also seen a little bit of surge in revenues. That's one. And the second impact, of course, is the discount brokers. There are several out there which in fact have seen once again an increase in revenues on account of the churn in activity that we've seen. Going forward, do you think that there could be some amount of weakness that we could expect on not just exchanges but brokers as well from the listed space?
Yeah, I agree with you. There will be definitely impact. In fact, Mr. Kamath of Zerodha had hinted at this when they did their quarterly earnings thing, and he was discussing it. He said that, look, I don't expect this to last for very long, because I expect SEBI to come out with strong measures. And these brokers were actually making money off the F&O trade, because they're offering free, otherwise broking the thing. So definitely I will see an impact on the margins for both discount brokers as well as exchanges. To what extent the market prices will reflect that is anybody's guess, but definitely there will have to be a re-rating of these. I agree with you there.
Mr. Subramaniam, going forward, what are the kind of measures that a lot of these exchanges and brokers will have to take in order for them to cover up these losses? There's plenty of innovation in terms of the kind of products that are putting up, but it just seems like all the products that are being introduced is to largely entice the speculative corner of the market participants at the moment. But I'm sure that can be plenty which can be done going forward in terms of investments as well. At the end of the day, how do you also see that the foreign investors will look at this development? Because in many of these developed markets, we do see a relatively free-flowing take on the derivatives. In fact, leverage is potentially can be taken to infinity. How do you think the foreign investors will see this?
I think the short-term foreign investors will definitely be concerned because this will impact liquidity in the market. So if a significant chunk of retail investors is going to be leaving this space in the market, so their ability, they will factor in certain extra caution on the ability to sell. So what will the losses be, the transaction cost be when they come to sell or do a counter trade? So definitely there will be some reassessment, but I think overall if you saw, like these prop books of these FIRs and all have been making a lot of money. So it's just a readjustment there, but I can't say that it will be without impact. Definitely there will be an impact on them in terms of the liquidity in the Indian market. The factor that they put in to correct for that, right, compared to other emerging markets. Definitely there, India would come off a little bit worse at this point in time compared to what it was before this regulation.
Sunil, one question from my end to you. Do you see now that there would be a significant decline in the way the retail participation, retail individuals participate in this market, given the fact you have tightened the norms with respect to size of the contract, intraday margins, extreme loss margins, and all other, measures which have been taken? Will it dissuade retail investors from coming into the F&O market?
I would like to take the answer for this from a correlation to a completely different industry, and that's the gambling industry. And I've seen in Singapore, where I'm currently based, that no amount of these restrictions prevents a gambler from reducing his thing. The gambling instinct will come in. So I don't think it's just that their costs and their losses will probably go up, but they can't be prevented from taking these funds. So I don't expect any significant drop there, but definitely because of these, their costs and their losses will go up. But that's part of the game. So essentially, if you look at these, I think market frequently uses the term investors for these people. I don't think they are investors, they are speculators, as you rightly put it. And so for a speculator, it's always a risk-reward play, right? Now the costs have gone up, so you'll expect a higher reward, and its trades will be accordingly that way. So I actually expect that they will now take even more risk to compensate for these additional costs. So the gambler's instinct will never go away.
Also, if you can bring in some context to what is the kind of dynamics change that will happen now to the entire broking industry, because the entire discount broking industry, flourished in the last 4 to 5 years because of the kind of inflow of new investors coming into this market, and especially into the F&O market. Do you see now some consolidation happening within the industry as a result of this hit?
Expect that in the natural course of time, because obviously the kind of margins, and they've been running on a kind of fabulous ride. I don't think that was sustainable, and to the extent that the market assumed that was sustainable, there will need to be a correction in terms of their re-rating. But I think that there will be consolidation, because ultimately now it will become more of a volume game. The only way you can compensate these losses is by increasing the scale. So I do expect some amount of M&A to happen here, so that the big scale players can then manage these things. So yes, I do think that there will be consolidation and some amount of M&A here.
All right. All of you, gentlemen, do stay with us. Let's also bring in Charu very, very quickly. Charu, obviously the aim of the regulator has been to curb a lot of retail investors who have burnt their fingers from doing more so. Now, these regulations, I understand, come into effect on the 20th of November.
Yes. Hi, Nupur. So, tentative dates have been given for all the regulations that have been brought in the circular from SEBI. Upfront option premium collection will be applicable from February 1, 2025. Then no calendar spread benefit on expiry day, which means that expiring contracts will be starting from February 1, 2025. Then you have intraday position monitoring. Exchanges will monitor positions at least 4 times daily from April 1, 2025. Then penalty for intraday breaches. Penalties for exceeding limits during the day will match the end of day penalties, and increased contract size. This is the most important one. The minimum contract value for index derivatives will be raised to rupees 15 lakh starting November 20, 2024. Earlier this was only 5 to 10 lakh and it was last updated in 2015, and now we have a much more increased contract size.
All right. As you are pointing out, of course, these hopefully will deter some of these retail investors. Let's go across very quickly to Mr. Ashish Rathi, who's the whole-time director of HDFC Securities. Mr. Rathi, good evening. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of these measures that have been put in place by SEBI? Do you think that they will be effective in deterring retail investors?
So, hi, good evening, Ashish here. I think the final circular is in line with what was there in the discussion paper. Obviously, the discussion paper of SEBI had 7 points. I think the 1 point they have not put it in the circular, which is pertaining to strike prices. So all the other 6 points they have put it in the circular along with dates for implementation. What I can see is the weekly expiry, which is now restricted. I think that definitely will have a dent in terms of volume. And the increase in margining that they have proposed on expiry days, and plus intraday also upfront collection of options margin, that definitely also will have an impact on retail volumes, is the understanding that we are getting as of now. But we will have to wait and see once these get implemented. That's my viewpoint.
Ashish, and I was asking, I was checking with Sunil as well on this. How do you see the broking industry now coping with these new dynamics? Because there will certainly be a decline in the volumes, daily volumes coming in once this entire framework comes into implementation. So, how do you see broking industry managing this hit? Rajesh, can you answer this question?
So definitely it's going to give impact to the broking industry also, especially the discount broker, because the changes in the slab structure that has also given the impact to the discount broker, which has implemented from the 1st of October. And again, these new measures which the SEBI has announced today will also going to hit in a big way to the discount broker or those who are having very low brokerage structure, because the major F&O volume and participation on options were happening at those kind of brokers, because the cost is the key element for the option trader. And where they have very low cost, they tend to take a big position in the market just to just in anticipation to get out from those trade quickly once they are above the break-even point of their cost plus their premium. So this tends to increase the volumes at where they have very low brokerage structure or very low cost when they execute the trades. So I think this is going to impact on those kind of brokers. Definitely it will have an impact to overall volumes of the exchanges also, because a lot many benefits.
Rajesh, I'm sorry to butt in here. I think we have Sandeep Parekh as well from FinSec Law Advisors. Sandeep, how do you see this regulation in light of the fact that there is a broader debate which is going on the F&O and the kind of retail participation that's going into this segment?
Yeah, hi. So I think it will have a fair amount of impact on the trades which are going to happen from November onwards. Essentially, I think they're implementing all the recommendations which were already in public domain and which were recommended by the committee, including higher upfront collection of premium, removal of some of the expiry dates. The weekly options are restricted. Contract sizes are increased. So I mean, basically, it's a means of putting sand in the wheels, and I think the idea is to kind of protect the investors from themselves. And I think they're not doing it by saying you can't do it. They're just making it much more expensive and more restrictive to trade in F&O.
Do you think more restrictive actions can follow on this, given the fact that some of the panels are saying that even though you are going to increase or make it difficult for the retail investor to come into this segment, if someone wants to do speculation or gambling, as they call it, they will continue to do so?
So I don't expect anything further. This is exactly what they proposed earlier, and this is what they're implementing. So I think it's reasonably clear that nothing else is now going to come for increasing the restrictions. I think this seems to be it. But I mean, it's going to be implemented over the next month or so. So we'll get to see, I guess, pretty shortly, what the impact of this is going to be on the actual volumes of the market.
Ashish, can you come in here? I was asking you about the kind of impact that it would have on many of the discount brokers. What is the kind of hit that you see on the top line and the EBIT levels for many of the brokers?
See, the measures are going to get implemented over a period of time. And where the dependency on brokerage is very high on derivatives, and as the volumes in derivatives are bound to get a bit lowered with all these restrictions, right now we don't have an estimation of any number which will impact, but definitely if we expect a 20% dip in volume, which we will have to see obviously how it goes about, then obviously their top line might also dip by 20% volume. So it will run in conjunction with whatever the volume dip happens in derivatives.
It's coming on the back of multiple things which have been put in place from October 1, from today as well. You have the SCT changes which is coming in, which increases the entire cost for the investors, and then you have the true-to-label regulations which have also come in. Do you think that all these together will be able to bring down the speculation and that we have seen, or the kind of interest that we have seen from the newer investors who are coming into the market?
So, yes, I think so in terms of transaction cost, I mean, what has happened previously is we have true-to-label, which has come into effective on 1st October. Secondly, the options STT also increases effective today. And thirdly, now with this circular also coming into picture, definitely there could be dip in volumes in derivatives. But I wouldn't say that we will have no speculators or jobbers, because these are the guys who still will be there in the market, and these are the ones who provide liquidity to the market, which is also an essential part. So if we think that we will have only pure investors and not these kind of speculators, then I don't think so it will work out that way. We will still have some amount of players of this category into the market, and which is essential also for the market to provide liquidity to the market.
All right. Thank you, all of you, for joining us on this breaking news. So finally, the SEBI curbs are now coming into place. We're given to understand that they begin from the 20th of November. They are largely to ensure that retail investors are deterred from the losses that they have been making in the F&O trades.